Hello and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, you can send questions and comments to the Facebook event page for the Masonic Factory, episode 256, or on the chat running alongside this YouTube video. So good evening for all of you watching us live on not quite MasonicCon Eve, right? we're almost there. So yeah, it's been great to prep up for this weekend's events. You know me, my name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. We have a skeleton crew tonight, but that's great because it's all about quality, not quantity. Maybe it's about quantity. We'll find out tonight by introducing my next co-host, Mike the intern. Good evening, Mike. How are you?
Good evening, Mike the intern. Mike Hambricht here. Triandria Lodge 780 and there's the other Lakeshore Lodge number 307 in Madison, Ohio.
And not just
great to be here tonight.
And not just how are you, but where are you?
I'm actually in East Syracuse, New York, about halfway between my house and Attleboro, Massachusetts.
There you go. I know where you're going.
Yeah.
Very cool. Maybe we'll see you as early as tomorrow night. Next up, my friend, co-host, and my driver
for most of not the entire way.
Jason Richards. Good evening, Jason.
Yeah, I should have been taking the Tesla.
I know.
You know, somebody had to go punch a hole in it.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, everybody. Jason Richards, past master, Vacation Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821 in Washington, D.C., and excited to be heading up to Attleboro, Massachusetts tomorrow with John. It'll be a lot of fun.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yeah, so my previous road trip plan failed miserably when my car got plowed into a couple weekends ago. So
you were not in it, though, so nobody was hurt.
Nobody was hurt. I was actually far away from the car to come out to a wrecked vehicle. So that's awesome. That being said, also want to give a shout out to all our patrons who's been supporting the show this whole way and having us get ready for some special fun things coming up. First one being at MasonicCon, so we'll see a few of you there, and we'll have a couple of surprises there. And for our super chats, right? We've been having a lot of fun with the testing out the super chat function in YouTube. So thank you for all of you who've been having fun with it and helping support the show at the same time. So much love to all of you. Now, tonight's episode is one that's kind of passionate to near and dear to my heart. It is about the Masonic Factory. So way back when I was a young Master Mason, I heard, what is the sole purpose of a Blue Lodge? Did you hear this one, Jason? What's the purpose of a Blue Lodge?
To make Shriners?
No. That's your Blue Lodge. What's
true story?
That's right. Hammy got it. The purpose of the Blue Lodge is to make Masons, to make more Masons. The purpose of Masonry is to make more Masons. So that's interesting.
To make more pancakes.
That's right. all the pancakes all the time.
You need more pancakes to feed all the Masons that you're putting through the one-day conferrals.
It's cyclical, right?
Yes.
But
that's what you call in systems thinking a self-reinforcing archetype.
That would be a positive reinforcing archetype. Yeah, so if that's true, which I mean, there's a lot of debate about quantity over quality and all that, but in general, the whole purpose of having good ritual at the Blue Lodge level and good leadership is to not show up and pay bills, but in addition to the education, which is what we came here to do, it's also to go through the ritualistic degrees in a sufficient manner to create new Masons. That being said, one of my pet peeves is about the decline of the membership in Freemasonry. So what can we do about it? And there's lots of different theories about why or how to fix it. But really, as I've said before, a lot of this is local, right? There's only certain things you can change with the culture of your local Blue Lodge, right? There's some things that can be done at the Grand Lodge level, but in general, you know your community best at your local level. So another thing that many of you know is that I do a lot of studying, reading on business practices. And there was an interesting business practice called the Customer Factory that I read about a couple of years ago. And it really stuck with me because I could see how it could apply to Freemasonry. So if you think of you're running a business, and yes, Masonry is not a business, but it is, but it's not. So how can you take care of your customers as you feed them through this funnel of not knowing anything about your business, not knowing anything about Masonry, to becoming a Mason for life? That's the goal. We're trying to move them from not knowing anything about Masonry to a long-term member. So in a business context, how can you track your customer engagement from not knowing anything about your business to creating a customer that keeps coming back? Well, one way is to think of your business as a factory that moves people through the use of your product to come out as happy customers. Right? They don't know anything about it. They enter your factory and out pops happy customer. So there's 5 components that really summarize the best way to think about what those steps are of how they engage with your product. So let's just purely talk business for right now, and I'll bring it back to Masonry later. A couple of years ago, there was a gentleman who came up with a name for these steps, and these are the metrics that you would use to measure how your customers are progressing through. And he coined a very catchy name, which I love, called Pirate Metrics. So why would they be called Pirate Metrics? Well, because if you initialize all of them, it's AARRR, or R for Pirate Metrics. And what they stand for are acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, and referral. And we're going to walk through those 5 in a business context, in a real world example, and then in a Masonic example to show how you can use this proven methodology to track your customers or your membership through this pipeline to make sure that you are getting, keeping, and growing your membership the right way. Now, even in some of the chat beforehand, RJ in our little chat room would say, well, oh, that's cool and all, but what if your goal is not more members, right? Because he, like most of us are, well, let's focus on quality or quantity. Well, if you're trying to weed people out, it's another way to keep track of how well your guarding of the West Gate or your plans are keeping track as well. So Jason has done a good job of finding the graphic that I was referring to. So let's look at this for a second. If your factory is right in the middle here, the first step is acquisition. Acquisition is how do they even know you exist, right? You're trying to find out how do customers find you, and it's when they turn from an unaware visitor to someone who's curious. Oh, I didn't know about that. Next up is activation. What is their first great experience that they have with your product? What is that first thing that catches them in? So they've moved from a browser to almost maybe even a little sample buyer, right? They got the free sample. Okay. Then the next step is retention. What drives repeat usage? How do they keep coming back? How do you know? And then if they keep coming back, eventually they're going to move into the next stage, which is revenue. They're going to become full-on buyers of whatever product you're selling. And then finally, if they are happy customers, you have gone from an uninterested person to a very happy customer, they're going to want to tell their friends. And how do you track referrals after that? the last step, referral. So acquisition leads to activation, which leads to retention, revenue, and then referral, or R.
In an ideal situation.
In an ideal situation. So obviously, customers can drop off at any step along the way, because just because they know about you might not mean they don't show up. And so you have to be specific about how you're tracking things along the way. And this is something that can be measured if you are doing it deliberately. So let me give you an example. Some of you, in the digital age, you see this every single day. Every ad that scrolls by on Facebook is the first step, is acquisition. How do they get your eyeballs? Right? And then if you click on that ad, boom, you've now gone from a browser to a buyer. You've given something of value, even if it's your time and it's your eyeballs. Right? And then sometimes you might have to fill out a form, submit your email address and get a free book or something like that. You've shifted away from just scrolling past it to now being actively participating in this thing. And then how do they keep you coming back? Do they have a subscription model? Do they have more products and services to offer you? And then finally, hopefully they make money off of you and then want you to, hey, here's a code that if you refer a friend, you get 20% off your next purchase, or if you refer a friend, you get $100, something like that. So you can see this all the time, but it's a nice way to codify this system. Let's give a real world example. And this doesn't have to be for digital either. Let's just use something as simple as a flower shop. Right? There's just a store that sells flowers and then will prune flowers and make all sorts of arrangements for you. In the case of the flower shop, just getting someone to walk by the window and stop and to come in to your shop is an acquisition event, right? Where you put your nice bouquets out front, you get their attention. Oh, that's interesting. That's a nice one. Oh, Mother's Day is right around the corner. Yeah, maybe I'll come in. Boom, that's first step. That's acquisition. Then activation in that flower shop would be, well, how's that experience once he comes in? Is the store messy? Is there anyone there to greet them? How's your customer service? Do you have any free samples? What is that thing that draws them in even deeper? Because they can certainly, like you said, turn right around and walk out the door and not buy anything. But we don't want that. In the flower shop, you could, have a deal of the week or deal of the month, right? And get them, once you get them on your email list, maybe you can send them out reminders. Hey, Father's Day is around the corner, and Grandparents' Day, and youngest sibling once removed day is coming around the corner. These are all different ways to get them to come back and in retention. But obviously, buying your flagship product is the way to get revenue. You may have just getting them to make the initial purchase or getting them to make the big purchase. Your big product that really makes you a lot of profit. And then obviously, having a good experience where they're going to tell their friends, hey, you really should go check out this flower shop. They took care of me. They were really nice. Good deals, good bargain. You should check them out. That's referral. That'll get their friends to come next. So it's simple to understand once you think through these 5 steps. So any questions so far between Jason and Hammy or anyone else of what we're talking about so far?
So, John, it might be helpful if you talk a little bit about how each of these steps can actually break down.
What are you thinking about?
So, it's somewhat of a linear cycle, but each step is prone to breaks. And when you look at acquisition and acquisition events, especially in Freemasonry, we're talking about, okay, what transpires between that first person finding out about the lodge.
Not there yet, because I really want to get there.
Okay. All right.
So if you want to use it as a business example right now.
Okay. So I am interested in procuring a new phone.
Okay.
because my iPhone is a year old, so the battery's almost dead constantly, and it's now 3 models behind. So, you know, I'm interested in looking at, okay, what breaks down between my realization that I need to procure a phone and going into the Apple store as that first acquisition. What can break down there? And
Right.
then what breaks down between, you know, my uh time at the Apple store, and then, you know, my decision to purchase, etc.
No, that's really good. So we see the acquisition all around the world because sometimes you'll see flyers sent out in the snail mail, right? Sometimes you'll see Facebook ads. Sometimes you'll you'll hear about you'll see TV ads, hey, or video ads right before YouTube that, hey, here the new iPhone 25 is out. You know, it's got 2 more bells and whistles and a jillion gigapixel camera, so it's obviously better. And so you're like, oh, well, that's interesting. I only have 1 gigapixel, so I'm curious about that. But that's just getting their eyeballs, because then the very next time another advertisement may come up, and if you don't of the Google Pixel whatever, and so so attention is fleeting, especially for 2019 humans, and that can break down pretty quickly. So merely advertising doesn't convert. You have to track your conversions along the way to make sure that there's a flow. So if you look at the real world, like Facebook ads, on average, even for like big name players, Facebook ads have a 1% conversion rate, a 1% click-through rate. That means for 100 eyeballs, only one person's going to click on it and go to the next step, whatever that step is. And that's good in industry. So that means that you have to, well, if you want, you have to almost 100x your acquisitions to get, 1x activations. And then again, if you get them in the door, if you get them browsing in the Apple store, if they have a bad experience in the Apple store, they're waiting around. The geniuses aren't mulling about. They're not helping. I'm waiting. I want to learn about the new phone, but it's the display one's broken and no one's coming to talk to me. I'm going to turn around and head out. Okay. And so you could lose customers every step along the way this way. And if you buy the phone and you're happy with it for a short period of time, you're going to want to tell some friends. So that's referral. Maybe your friends are all Android folks. Well, you're not going to really convert those as referrals yet. But the goal is to get retention. I think one way that Apple does
and repeat business.
Yes.
So if I like it, I can go back for additional products and services, right?
Bingo. That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's not only the referral business, but it's also the repeat business.
And Apple does a good job with this because they lock you into the iTunes ecosystem. That all their purchases stay within it and work with all the other iDevices. Same thing with Android, right?
Phone, iPad that I have here, and my watch as well.
Yes. You're all locked in, and you're not going to convert very easily. It's going to be very hard to substitute switching to a completely different device, because that's how they focus on retention. All right, so now we've talked for about 15 minutes on this. What does this have to do with Freemasonry? Well, let's use a Masonic example.
No, this is where you're going.
This is where I was going with it, right? And what does that have to do with Freemasonry? What is activation, or what is acquisition in Freemasonry? What do you think a good example of acquisition would be in Freemasonry?
Someone finds your lodge on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
Maybe you have a targeted Facebook ad or something along those lines.
That would be a very modern way. What would be a very low-tech way, Mike? What do you think would be a good way
to be one, ask one?
You joke, but that's a really good example.
That's all I meant. Really, you're asking one. It's not really trying to use the slogan, but
yeah. What's that mean? Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, no.
Someone has a square and compass. I know something about the square and compass.
Right. No, really, it's just that somebody walks up and asks a guy wearing a ring.
Mm-hmm.
In the elevator.
Yeah,
That's right.
That's how I joined, in the elevator. The very low tech approach to this is as simple as how do you get someone's eyeballs onto Freemasonry, right? We're not talking about advertising, recruiting, and all that yet. We could, but it could be as simple as, most lodges have an open dinner before the first dinner lodge night of the month, or they will have an open breakfast, the first Saturday of the month, or they'll have an open blood drive, open to the public. So all of these things are ways to, we say promote and get out in the community. Well, why are we going out in the community, right? And putting a big square and compass on it. We could go out in the community without being lodge members, but we do it as a lodge so that we get eyeballs. We get people to be interested in seeing the good deeds we do. Good deeds alone could be simple enough as a way to acquire new members. Okay. Now that we've got their eyeballs and they've heard about this Mason thing, how can we get them to activate? Right? How can we get them to go from a browser to a buyer? How can we get them to think about what would activation look like for Freemasonry?
Petition.
That's a great example.
What Mike said.
That's the quintessential one. That is the goal, right? That is the goal. I could say that is certainly the best example. Another example could be, how are we tracking that person who, got a flyer, of what is Freemasonry? Your Grand Lodge has all these flyers about, who are the Masons? What do they do? And you give them out, but you don't track that guy. You don't know if he, reads it or throws it in the trash. So could there be a way where you could go from that guy who showed up for the blood drive? You gave him a flyer. How do you get him to come back? Because that could be that first good experience in the lodge.
You take his information down and you spam him without his consent.
With his consent.
With consent, yes. Let's be confused.
Please unsubscribe. Yes. Yeah. So that's one way that I think you could do that more efficiently, because we don't keep track of how well we just hand out these flyers and hope for the best. No, if someone took the flyer out of your hand, there is at least some interest in Freemasonry. Follow up, right? Say, hey, can we give you a call later? Can we let you know about what's coming on? Can we add you to our email list and see what's going on? If not, no big deal. But hey, you took the flyer, so we care about you.
Follow up and have them come to the dinners. Even if they're the ones that are after the lodge. Tell them, they can come. Approximately what time you're usually done with the meeting, because you kind of know that frame. When dinner usually starts.
Right.
Plus, you got the Tyler outside the door anyway to keep them from coming up, and you just say, "Go on, sit down. We'll be right down." Yeah. That way they get to hang out, get to know you guys, things like that.
Exactly. Perfect. Right. Then the next step after activation becomes retention. How do you get people coming back? Now, what's interesting about the way this is laid out, they don't jump right into revenue. Revenue is the next step, but previous to that is retention, because getting people coming back is actually more valuable than getting their dollars. And we can see that, right? The way that you get guys who, they just get rushed through, go through a blue lightning, and then we don't see them again.
Where'd they go?
We're just here a second ago. Oh,
man, we had a plan for that guy. He was supposed to be our next junior deacon.
Right. Because we rushed it. We didn't do like the dating process, right? We just rushed right into, third base. No. We'll slow down, take it easy, right?
Oh yeah, like I said, that's the whole point of the trying to get them to come in and just come to dinners for a while, But
right,
yeah,
get them coming back more than just one.
Right,
more than just one. Meet the guys.
Yeah, and get them to put some work. Even though they're not even a Mason yet, get them to put some work into becoming one. Even getting to be, I hate to put it this way, getting to be allowed to be one.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, that's kind of the way it works too. You may sign the petition and hand it to us, but that's not in. We still have to decide.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't know you, we can't decide. It's kind of hard. Well, we do, but we shouldn't on every case.
We shouldn't.
Yeah.
That's right. So that's a good example of retention. What are some other examples of how you could promote retention even before they become a buyer or become a member of the fraternity? How could you promote retention of these people who are already curious and you've already showed up for one event?
Well, there's just regular reach back can't be understated. Just meeting some of the prospective brethren who come into a meeting or come into dinner, exchanging contact information with them, and then following up with them and encouraging them to come back. I mean, that goes a long way. It's just huge.
Absolutely. And the unsaid so far is retention also works for your paid customers, because retention is also a problem with the fraternal membership we have today. Hey, wait, I've heard that before. So how do we focus on retention, not acquisition? For those who have seen my presentation about the demographics and statistics of the Masonic fraternity, we do not have a new membership problem. We have a retention problem. So we don't have an acquisition problem. We're doing okay. We could do better, but that's not where the drop off is. To Jason's point, where do these points break? And right now we have a breakage in retention. So that so that works as well for existing members in the fraternity, giving a phone call just to make sure they're okay. Another thing I was thinking about, and this kind of jumps ahead to kind of the conclusion, is wouldn't it be nice if we knew with data, like when the last time so and so went to lodge was? Hey, I haven't seen Hammy around lodge lately. That's really weird. Yeah, I wonder what happened to him. When was the last time he was at lodge?
Right. And the other side of that is when you start asking that question, if you haven't seen him in what seems like an unusual amount of time, pick up the phone or drive over and see him, because you don't know. I mean, how many times have we heard this one where guy sends out the dues notices and then you find out that a member has passed away 2 years ago?
Yeah. I mean, I know RJ has a ton of stories as secretary, trying to send out dues notices, and oh well, sorry, our bad. Wish we'd known about that sooner. Right? You can't fix what you don't know.
Right.
So then the next step would be revenue. Okay, this is eventually how do we get them as full-on members, right? And one thing to think about revenue. Okay, great. We've gone through the 3 degrees. He's paid his dues. Now what? Right? How do we track this member? Right? Because if we are an annual dues paying fraternity, we hope for membership for life. That's the grand hope. Let's call it for what it is. Well, in business, there's a term called customer lifetime value, which means that you have to take your average customer base and figure out how long does it take before they stop becoming customers. In a Masonic context, can you, with data, see how long the average Masonic life of a member, and a living member, is of your lodge? In other words, when do people normally drop off? When do they stop paying dues? Now you're saying, well, some of my guys have been around forever. But what I mean is, if you aggregate all your membership, including the ones that never came back, what is the average Masonic lifetime value of your lodge? And that can give you a rough number that says, people are members in this lodge for 7.5 years. That's the customer lifetime value of averaging out all the membership, and we know that we're going to be losing members around the 7.5-year mark. So that gives you some data to say, if maybe I should start, engaging with these guys after the honeymoon period, right? After they've been here for a little while, they got their feet wet, held a little officer position. Maybe I should reach out and do something special for them. To have a certificate, have some sort of King Solomon Award, and just recognize these Masons who've been around. Celebrate Masonic birthdays, but go a little bit above and beyond to make sure that their customer lifetime value extends. Okay. And then the last one, which we see a lot more in Freemasonry, but don't handle it as such, is referral. What does Masonic referral look like? I mean, this one should be fairly obvious, but
bring a friend night.
That's a good one. Absolutely. What do you think, Hammy? What's another good example of Masonic referral?
Masonic referral. Well, you have to bring a friend night, but you've also got that I signed the first line of your petition.
Yes, both of them are perfect examples of Masonic referrals. And so, one thing I wish I had the data on what the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania is doing, because we've talked about how Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania has almost a catalog of like watches and golf clubs and stuff like that, where if you are the top line signer of so many petitions and those members stay for so long after they've been raised, you get a new watch. So it truly is like a loyalty card program for Freemasons. And I don't quite see anything wrong with it if we're guarding the West Gate and taking care of everything else of all of the vetting process that goes in making men Masons. But you have to think about what can we do better to keep track with data how we're doing on referrals.
And what would be cool too is to actually, you said, give them a watch because they stayed around for so long. But we right now, I know that a lot of lodges, Grand Lodges actually do this, is the 5-year, the 10-year, the 15-year, and then 25, 50-year, Masons. But that isn't that they've been active for 25, 50 years. Those are guys that sometimes you gotta put it this way, but you gotta wheel them in,
Yep.
And you're actually calling them up and saying, we're going to do this for you on the such and such award night. You can bring your family, and and they show up. Now our 50-year members and higher, we also have to, as soon as we know about them, we've got to start hitting on those, because some of those guys are on the older end of things, especially our 75-year ones. I know that the Grand Lodge says, if as soon as you figure that one out, you got to let us know, because we want to get to that guy today, because tomorrow, let's not go there.
Yeah.
So, but my opinion is that maybe we should, I don't mind doing those, but maybe we should find a way to do the same thing for active. Guys who are, that show up for, I know guys who have been secretaries of their lodges for 30 years, which means they've been active for 30 years, so.
Right. If nothing else, like a perfect attendance award.
Right.
That's simple. Yeah. Who here attended, 12 out of 12 meetings last year? And just do that annually, right? That's one way to engage and give some little pomp and circumstance to those active members, because that's the incentive you're trying to promote. Right? You're not trying to promote we don't know who you are, but 75 years ago you joined Freemasonry, so good on you, right?
Absolutely.
So you can see how all of these pieces stack up in a very clear way to progress through Freemasonry. And the last thing I'll add to this is that now once you kind of map how you are getting members, how you are getting someone who knows nothing about Freemasonry through this Masonic Factory and becoming a happy Masonic member in the output, then the question is, what if I tried something new? What if I tweaked this input, right? So the best example is, well, why are we doing this, this pancake breakfast? Because we really don't have a lot of people showing up. Well, we've been doing it that way for, 25 years. So obviously we got to keep doing it, right? Okay, well, how many members are we creating from these pancake breakfasts? Is it just the same 4 guys, or are we getting new members through this?
It's all the officers.
Yeah, because they have to show up anyway.
Yeah.
And then you can now track a brand new acquisition cycle. So you keep your pancake breakfast as one entry point in, but then say, hey, worshipful master, what if we ran a Facebook ad in our local zip code and ran it for a week and then saw what kind of click-through rate, how we got people to come in and show up for an event. It could be, maybe we're doing a DMLA car wash, but we'll run a Facebook ad to get people to come in, to acquire them before we get them to activate and hand them a petition when they're there. And we can track that. And when we see new people show up, we can say, hey, how did you hear about the car wash? Was it the sign, that was hand painted out front, or, oh no, I saw it on Facebook and I figured I was in the area, I need my car wash. Oh, cool. Have you heard about the Masons? Yeah, I have. So that starts the conversation. But now you can track that. You got to ask so you can measure it. What gets measured gets done. And if you don't measure it, right, you can't see how well you're progressing. And so that is just yet another new acquisition path. Now you can have multiple acquisition paths coming in. We do this all the time. We just don't track it, right? Because the Masonic Roundtable is an acquisition path to Freemasonry. Sing to be one, ask one on your neighbor's bumper sticker is an acquisition path to Freemasonry, but they are poorly tracked. This is where, the digital world today tracks advertising much, much, much more succinctly with data than it ever used to be, because it always used to be, well, run a newspaper ad. Well, are you guaranteeing people are actually looking at it? Well, put a billboard up. Well, today, what do people do in their cars? Well, they're texting while they're driving anyway, so they're not looking at your billboards. So how do we go convert all these different acquisition paths and keep track of what's getting them to that next step, right? And then in activation, like we said earlier, in activation, how do we track the person's name, and maybe email address, and maybe phone number, I don't know, of, hey, I did the blood drive. I'm kind of curious about Freemasonry. I took your pamphlet, and now I'm giving you my information, so maybe you can follow up. And the next blood drive that happens, oh, hey, that guy showed up again. That's interesting. We should do something about that. We should track that, because maybe he just didn't meet the right guy last time, but he's here again. How do we, move to that next stage in the relationship, to use the dating example? But if we didn't know it was the same guy, because it could be all new different brothers running the blood drive next time. But if they have that sheet, if they have that spreadsheet that tracks, I see. I see you came here at the last blood drive, and welcome back, and I saw you were interested in Freemasonry. Did you get a chance to talk to anybody last time? If not, Jason over here, he'd talk your ear off about it, and he'll help answer any questions you might have. But if you don't know that guy came back for the second time, you'll lose him for life. Right? And then same thing. How do you then track retention, right? That is part of that retention process. Revenue. Well, we all know that we need to take care of our membership. We all know that we need to call brothers who haven't been in lodge for a while. So again, oh gosh, this was one of my pet peeves. We have access to so much data nowadays, where you could easily set up some sort of database that says, here are all the members that signed in every month, and if a member doesn't show up for 6 months, give them a call. Like, just have it automatically set off alerts to the secretary and a person on your membership committee, whatever it is. That's easy to do nowadays. right? And it could be as simple as having one brother be part of like the membership committee of your lodge to look through your secretary's minutes and just write down, put it in a database, a spreadsheet. It doesn't have to be hard. It could be a spreadsheet that keeps track of Jason attended on this stated meeting. Just put a little X. And after a while, you'll see all these X's fill out, and then you'll see the X's drop off and say, I wonder what's going on. Maybe we should check on Jason.
What happened?
What happened? Oh, Jason had a baby. Oh, well, okay.
Highly unlikely.
We know. Right? It happened once. So we know that is the reason why Jason didn't come back. And maybe we'll say, hey, congratulations. Love to see you back when, family stuff settles down. So you can see if you track it meticulously, you can actually get a lot of insight as to what's going on with the overall factory, the Masonic Factory that is your Blue Lodge. And then referrals, right? I think, should there be some kind of incentive, some kind of award for the brother who's the most top line signer? What do you guys think?
Oh, the top line signer stuff? Well,
Well,
I know they do that in Ohio here. I know we do that with our commandery, and we do that with our Scottish Rite.
What do you mean? What do they do?
Well, I know right now they haven't been doing it for the Scottish Rite, but I know they're planning. They're talking about bringing it back. They used to have the basically it was a medallion for 5. Bringing in 5 new guys as a top line signer for Scottish Rite. And they're actually going to start doing ones for 5, then 10, then 15. And, so as it keeps building, it's a different medallion, and I don't know if that's an annual basis or what, I don't know how long they track that as to, you're a top line signer, this is your reward for that, But I know that in commandery, they do the same thing with the yellow and the red and the white cords and, that go on the uniforms. I don't know the whole details on that because I haven't even gotten one top line signer for that yet. So, but I'm not pushing that one either. It's just, I know about these, but that's as far as it goes.
Jason, what would you think about having? Let's go all in. Let's have a statewide award for the Mason who's brought in the most new Masons as a top line signer.
I would be fine with it with certain caveats that would never be enforced. So I'd be fine with it if there were certain caveats put in place, but I know they would never be put in place and they'd never be enforced. There are certain expectations, at least in Virginia, of top line signers. Mentorship, quality of mentorship, in some cases, catechism mentorship and catechism instruction is part of being that top line signer. That is an expectation, and it is is not fulfilled in very many cases. So that's one caveat. The one caveat would be making sure that as a top line signer, you are fulfilling your duties to your candidates. And if you can't fulfill those duties for those candidates, then don't be a top line signer.
So they would have to be the mentor, or would they be responsible for assigning a qualified active mentor? King for a day.
Ideally, they would be the mentor.
Yeah.
However, understand, it's the ideal isn't always the way to go. So just it's again, it's a way to ensure retention, right? So that referrals are their own business activations, and it's like compound interest when you gain those referrals, which turn into repeat business at a much exponentially larger scale. So in order to ensure that the cycle doesn't break down with the referrals, mentorship is very important, and I think that falls squarely in the job jar of the top line signer. In addition, there's the issue of guarding the West Gate and making sure that a level of quality is maintained.
As in they have a pulse.
Yes. It
That
cannot be dead.
okay.
But I mean, to be honest, there's quality and quantity are not mutually exclusive. I get that. But there can be a tendency for folks to just give petitions to everybody under the sun and just sign away. And I think that's the wrong way. That's a very good way to fortify Freemasonry with the wrong kinds of Masons. And so I would say, absent lack of mentorship and a lowering of quality and barriers to entry, I would be for some sort of incentive program or rewards program for those that bring in those referrals.
How about this for non-lifetime members? If you're an annual dues paying member and you bring in, let's just say, let's make it simple, 5, 10, 10. We're going to say 10.
Say 10.
10 Masons, and they stay Masons for a year. Maybe one idea would be, hey, the worshipful master at his discretion can remit your dues for that next calendar year. For the next calendar year, because that means they've stuck around for a year. They've paid their dues to the lodge. What are you? I'm seeing the stink face from Jason. Maybe.
I mean, if that is a motivator, then okay.
Right. Because in the chat, I see some people say, well, our lodge gives a tie to the one who has the most top line signers. Okay, ties are great, but are they a motivator to generate referrals? Right? Referrals are interesting in the fact from a behavioral science perspective. I'm not going to refer you to something as a friend if I don't believe in it myself, or unless there's a huge, Ponzi scheme that's behind me that's motivating me to get you in because I don't care what you think.
Yeah, and that was my concern and why I made that face, because that to me then starts sounding like a bit of a Ponzi scheme.
Mm-hmm. And so if you spread it out as far as like, one, you want to make sure that these new members that have been referred are not just one and dones, that they are active. I mean, you could start adding, you could make it a little bit more complex, but to make your point more more solidified is, okay, they not only have to be 10 new Master Masons, but then they also have to be active Masons. They have to attend 8 out of 12 meetings that year. So it's not just the guys that you met and they just go off and join an independent body, that they're active in the Blue Lodge. I don't know. These are all just like hypotheticals, but these are ways that you can turn the knob on the referral part, because that is, I mean, we as Freemasonry, that is what our non-recruitment way of joining membership. We have the loose limitation on we can't recruit, and yet at our Grand Lodge, Grand Annual Communication about 3 or 4 years ago, the Grand Master said, hey, look, we heard you can't recruit. He says, but the Grand Master's saying this now. I'm going to paraphrase. I see nothing wrong with you going to a friend that would make a great Mason and going, say, you know what? I'm a Mason. Why haven't you joined Masonry yet? Let's talk about it.
And I've heard the same thing, and from our Grand Lodge, very similar. And actually, the way it was actually put there was, recruiting is actually more where you sit there and say, look, if you sign up, this is what you'll get. That's recruitment. We're more or less saying to someone, I think you'd be a great Mason. How would you like to, learn about it? Or going up to a guy and saying, hey, I'm a Freemason. Have you ever thought about, looking into being one yourself? You're not asking them, you're not recruiting. Even if you walk up to a guy and go, hey, I like you, would you like to petition for Masonry? I don't even think that's, quite recruiting. It's a little bit pushier, but it's not the same thing. It's not like when you have someone come into your house to show you the new windows you might want to put up, and and they sit there for an extra half an hour because you've still said no 3 times, and said, well, what have I done wrong? That's that, if you're doing that with Masonry, that's recruiting, and yeah, something's wrong there.
That's a great point. So that in summary kind of codifies what I've been thinking about this, the customer factory model of the pirate metrics called acquisition, activation, um, retention, revenue, and referral, and how that can be applied in a Masonic context. The last thing I'll add on that is I covered that in brief in the book that RJ and I wrote last year. It's Business Time, Adapting a Corporate Path for Freemasonry. So if you want to read some more about that and other business ideas, go check that out on Amazon. And I think we're on the iBooks as well. So that's one way you can kind of think about these principles. How could you use that in your lodge setting to manage, not necessarily focus on just quantity over quality, but manage your membership pipeline.
Don't forget your books on Audible too.
That's right. How could I forget that? Thank you, Brother Jared Stanley, for recording that for us. So let's go around the horn and do kind of the shameless plugs and final thoughts as we get ready for Masonicon this week. Mike, the intern, what say you?
So this has been a great conversation here we've had. I've liked a lot of what I've heard. Would really like to see a little bit of this kind of stuff being able to be put into practice. And the biggest question I have even along those lines is, is this something we should also be doing on a district level as well as a lodge by lodge level? I don't want to say on a Grand Lodge level because they already do something, but
not very well.
Won't push that.
They do it very well.
No, but in any case, though, shameless plugs. The end of May here, Lakeshore Lodge number 307 will be having More Light Night with Robert Johnson showing up as the presenter, doing his Masonic pub crawl or Masonry's American Colonial Tavern Beginnings. So anyway, anybody, if you want to be a part of that, the event is free. There is a dinner beforehand. We require reservations for that, though. So anyway, thanks. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Drive safe on your way to Attleboro.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Thanks.
You guys, too.
Yes. It'll be a long drive, but it'll be fun. Road trip. Jason.
All right. Excited to see folks this weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun. So come up and see us. We're going to have a table. We'll have a booth at Masonicon. It'll be a lot of fun. And looking forward to seeing everybody. It's a good episode. I love it when we talk about the intersection of Freemasonry and business practices, just because Freemasonry is just such a poorly run business, to be honest. And I know everybody's like, oh, it's not a business, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's Freemasonry has a deeply transactional nature. And if you think of a business as just a set of experiences with a transactional nature, then you can equate one to the other, without making people angry, I suppose. We want to run our lives the best way we can, and that includes our vocations, but also our extracurriculars. And so there's plenty of things that we can adapt to this great fraternity and this great organization without cheapening it to the point of it being simply a commercial transaction. Because I don't think anybody on the show, at least, is implying that Freemasonry is simply a cheap commercial transaction. So with that, I'll give it back to you, John. I hope to see at least some of you up in Attleboro, Massachusetts this weekend.
Woohoo! Okay, back to me. It's not so much about commercialization, it's about the pure economics of why we create value in the first place. What is the value of Freemasonry, and are we getting that value back from our members? And that doesn't have to be dues, because as we know, you can have the poorest member of your lodge that's always there and willing to help and lend a hand and fix things is a much more valuable member than those who pay dues and never show up. And so it's not about money per se, but it is about value exchange between why we exist as a fraternity and how do we maximize the value we're giving and optimize the value we're returning back from our members. And that should be the sole purpose of why we would run members through the Masonic Factory. So do want to give a shout out to our super chats, Art Monk. He's been really nice, been with us for many weeks, and has just helped us out by chipping in a little bit and giving us a thumbs up to tonight's topic. So this has been a blast. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put a skeleton out there, a little framework of how this spreadsheet could work for your lodge. So I'm actually going to do a spreadsheet, a Google sheet, and share it for our patrons only. So if you are not yet a patron, go to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable and join as a knight or squire, and you can have access to the Masonic Factory spreadsheet that'll be here in a couple days, maybe during the road trip. We'll see. So good times, great episode, and thank you very much for watching. We'll see you at Attleboro, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.